Good morning, friends. Thank you for joining me online. And from next Sunday, the 28th, we'll be meeting both online and in person in church. So if you'd like to join me in the church on Sunday the 28th, please let us know. We have to keep our numbers below 100, as you are aware. So please contact us. Let us know if you're going to join me in church for Palm Sunday. Otherwise, I'll see you online again then. Both services will be exactly the same format. Same reading, same songs, same preaching. Just the difference being some of you will be with me in church and some online. I'll also be sending out an email that will detail our Easter program for you, what times the services will be, how the services will work, and all that you need to know around our Easter program. But also don't forget the information that's on the website. And I'm very aware that quite often we're posting information on the website and it's not being picked up because people aren't going there to read what's on the website. And you need to practice doing that. So please go to the website, the front page, plettmethodist.co.za. There's Bible study notes there. There's archives of sermons. There's a calendar there. Anything that you need to know about what it is that we are doing is on the website. So please go and check that out. Our reading for this week is from John chapter 12, starting at verse 20. And Paul and Sheila are going to share the reading for us. It's a nice difference. But I invite you to join me now as we turn to the Word, obviously with a message to follow.
Jesus predicts his death. Some Greeks who had come to Jerusalem for the Passover celebration paid a visit to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee. And they said,
"Sir, we want to meet Jesus."
Philip told Andrew about it, and they went together to ask Jesus. Jesus replied,
"Now the time has come for the Son of Man to enter into his glory. I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat is planted in the soil and dies, it remains alone. But its death will produce many new kernels, a plentiful harvest of new lives. Those who love their life in this world will lose it. Those who care nothing for their life in this world will keep it for eternity. Anyone who wants to serve me must follow me, because my servants must be where I am, and the Father will honor anyone who serves me. Now my soul is deeply troubled. Should I pray, 'Father, save me from this hour'? But this is the very reason I came. Father, bring glory to your name."
Then a voice spoke from heaven, saying,
"I have already brought glory to my name. I will do so again."
When the crowd heard the voice, some thought it was thunder, while others declared an angel had spoken to him. Then Jesus told them,
"The voice was for your benefit, not mine. The time for judging this world has come, when Satan, the ruler of this world, will be cast out. And when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw everyone to myself."
He said this to indicate how he was going to die.
Friends, the theme for the message this week is the cost of new life. And what I mean by that is, and you'll hear me saying it over and over again, that being a disciple of Jesus and following him carries a price tag with it. But what do I mean by price tag? Another way we could say for the theme this week would be the cost of new life means dying to live. And that last part, dying to live, is quite paradoxical, isn't it? It's a statement that doesn't always seem to make sense to us. What does it mean to say, I'm dying to live? Remember, too, that Jesus used paradox as a teaching tool. And there was a training for the rabbis in his day about that, very, very skill that they developed. But we also know from the reading that there were philosophers in the audience. And the philosophers in Jesus' day used paradox as a means for teaching as well. So perhaps Jesus, looking at his audience, saw the philosophers there, recognized them, and so he brought this teaching tool into the reading that we're going to be looking at together this week. Now, if you're going to find your life, for example, a paradoxical statement, if you're going to find your life, you're going to have to lose it. It's only in giving that you receive. If you want to be first, then you must be last. If you're going to be a master, you must be a servant of others. All these paradoxes wrapped up in one key understanding. And this is really what our whole message hinges on for this week and for the last part of Lent. We must die if we want to live. Just think around that. We must die if we want to live. In your imagination, in mine, the crowd has gathered. Jesus is about to speak. And we know there's a crowd there because we're told it's the feast of Passover. Massive Jewish celebration about to take place. So some Greeks had come to the feast, and they weren't there just to observe the Jews in action. They were there, and we are told the philosophers, the Greek philosophers were there. Why? Because they wanted to see Jesus. They wanted to hear what this man was about. He was the focal point of their attention. And why was he drawing so much attention to himself? Well, just before this event, Lazarus had been raised from the dead. Let that sink in for a moment. A man who was dead was now alive. That message had gone out. People had heard it. They had come to see who was the one who had done that miracle. Obviously, it was Jesus. They wanted to hear more from him, from Jesus. And so Jesus was the focus of all their attention. We know too that in that crowd, not just the philosophers and the ordinary Jewish people, but also Pharisees were there. And they were getting desperate, according to our gospel writer. They were getting desperate about shutting this ministry of Jesus down. Verse 19, the verse just before we read together this morning, says this: "See, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world has gone after him." We know that in itself, that statement is an exaggeration. It wasn't the whole world as we know today, but it was the whole world within the Jewish understanding. That particular worldview was now following Jesus and his teaching, caught up in the personality of who Jesus was. And so with that mental picture in mind, can you imagine the tension building in this crowd? Jewish people, philosophers, Jewish leaders, disciples, Jesus, passers-by, they're all waiting for Jesus to say something. And so Jesus, knowing what's going on, verse 23, makes this declaration. He says these words. He says, "The hour has come." Do you hear that in your mind? Eh? The hour has come. It's as if Jesus stood up and said, "Right, everyone, this is it." So they wait. Then came Jesus' words. "Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." Verse 24. Wow. Surely you and I would be saying, like the crowd on that day, what is going on now? He made the statement as if something big in terms of news was coming, and now he's spoken about a grain of wheat falling into the ground and dying. What is this about? So I imagine a silence settling on the crowd. I wonder if any scribe there wrote anything down about that moment. I wonder if the people looked around at each other, trying to understand what was going on. Maybe there was that throwaway comment, like we sometimes do in congregations too. Hey? There's no big news here. Waste of time. Those sorts of approaches all missed the point. And the point they missed actually becomes the whole headline story of the gospel at this moment. It's the heart of Jesus' call. Why it's so important for us now at Lent as well. And the call is, we have to die to live. So Jesus, having begun with this opening statement, drawing their attention, pulling them in, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Then finishes with a series of sayings which no one expected, no one, I suppose, wanted to hear. Maybe the sayings left confusion and misunderstanding. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies. It remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it does bear much fruit. Other ways, that similar sort of idea, the man who loves his life will lose it, while the one who hates his life, or the one who hates her life in this world, will keep it. Trying to make sense of these paradoxes, I thought, well, isn't it true? Really, isn't it true in life at times that if we're going to get anything out of life, we first of all have to invest our time and our energy and our skills in life? Do you get that? It's by investing in and giving ourselves into life, the something we're investing in, that we then get out of life, get more of life out for ourselves and our experience of how life works. So this gift of new life in Jesus carries a price tag. So 3 points I'd like you to remember that will help you understand this price tag idea. The first is, when the grain of wheat falls, it dies. We could actually say, when the grain of wheat falls, it must die. This is a shift in Jesus' ministry. For the Son of Man to be glorified, there's no time left now for the development of new disciples, right? There's no time left for new miracles or more miracles to convince people about his teaching. There's no time for Jesus to debate with religious leaders or the philosophers that are sitting there. There's no time left. Why? Because the Passover is now. And we know in our Easter story, don't we, that the Jews have come for the Passover celebrations. And it's during the Passover and in that whole week of celebration that Jesus will be arrested and he'll be crucified. So the time for Jesus is up in terms of ministry and teaching. The time is now for proclaiming who he is. That grain of wheat has fallen from the plant and is falling down to the ground. Can you see that? The grain of wheat is falling soon to land on the earth. The death of that grain of wheat is a certainty. But that's what needs to happen for the rebirth to take place. Now, this type of teaching was difficult for the disciples then, and it's quite difficult for us now as Christ followers to get our thoughts around this, because this way of talking becomes the model for ministry. The disciples, hearing what Jesus was saying, should have been asking themselves, am I willing to follow Jesus and serve Jesus as Jesus has served us and served others? Am I willing to do what it takes to die to self so that new life can come? We remember that Jesus said, whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant will be also. And so at this moment in Lent, I want to ask you once again, do you intend to follow Jesus? And if you're going to answer yes, I will follow him, then you need to understand the price tag is service for him and for his kingdom. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, wrote to the people called Methodist at one stage, and he wrote what is we know now as our rule of conduct. And it will come up on the screen for you. It goes like this. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. Bit of an understanding of what the price tag of discipleship might mean. Caring, loving, following, serving. This way of thinking now brings us to that second announcement, the second major point to remember this week. That new life bears much fruit. If there's no fruit being born, then there is no life. That's the other way that we could look at that statement. this new life in Jesus, new life through Jesus, must bear fruit. When the grain of wheat falls and dies, it bears fruit. Trying to get my head around that, I thought of the following illustration. I thought of all those mothers out there that have sacrificed their time, their careers, that have sacrificed so much of who they are in order to raise children in their home. So in many ways, the whole role of the mother echoes this. The mother gives up so much of herself that the child might live and the child might grow and the child or the children might develop and be the best people one day that they can be. A death to herself that her children might live. Right? Another example, a number of years ago, Jane and I lived in Grahamstown, obviously with our family. And during that time, we often had the opportunity to go to the Rhodes University graduation ceremonies. And I remember this one particular year, during graduation, that a young woman went up on the stage to receive her degree, be capped as they do and receive her degree. And after that had happened, she turned to face the audience, and this couple of rows near where we were sitting stood up, and the noise was amazing. There was shouting, and there was whistling, and there was singing. There was a spontaneous celebrating from with all these people sitting in front of us. And I wondered what on earth was going on. Why were they reacting like that about this one young woman graduating? Now, I happened to know someone in that group and was chatting to them afterwards. And I said, please explain to me what was going on there. And they said to me that I needed to understand that that young woman came from a rural village. And the people in that village understood that not all the children would be able to go to school or be educated in the way that they would love to have their children educated. And so they had, at some stage, identified this young woman as being the one who the village would sponsor and nurture and get through. Perhaps she was the most promising of the children from an educational point of view. I'm not quite sure. But what I do know is that this woman had gone through school and then gone through university. She was now graduating, and the whole village was there to celebrate because they had all sacrificed something that she might progress, that she might develop. And I thought, wow, how amazing is that? That in many ways they died to self, meaning that carefully, so she could really live into her life. Unless a grain of wheat falls and dies. Let's be clear that in our Bible reading for this week, that grain of wheat falling and dying is not you and me. All right? To be honest to Scripture, that grain of wheat is Jesus himself. He's talking about his coming death on the cross. And so he's saying that he has got to die, and when his death happens, the church, the new life that will become the church, is born out of that. Now, understanding that, we can say then that is how we too are expected by him to behave. That we too must die to self in order to serve others. That's quite hard for us, especially as congregations, because quite often we align ourselves with service organizations, with NGOs, public benefit organizations. There's nothing wrong with that, and those groups and organizations do an amazing job of work. They are so valuable. But there's a difference between what the service organizations do and we do as Christ followers. They follow their constitution. They do their service work as they are expected. We do our service work because we, like that grain of wheat falling to the ground, have died to self. We understand we are called into discipleship. So we do what we do through Jesus and for his church. Not for our organization and not for our personal gain. My Father will honor the one who serves me. And so this leads us into that third point, that Jesus is always the focus of our service and our mission. Jesus, the one who died first. Jesus, the one who rose from the dead first. Jesus, the one who ascended into heaven, is the one who comes first in our lives. Without him, there is no fruit that we can bear in our life, in our spiritual walk. Troy said to us last week that when Jesus is lifted up, all eyes will be lifted up to him. That image of Jesus on the cross. And by being lifted up on the cross, all people are drawn to him. So Jesus must be the focus of all that we do in terms of our service and our mission and our faith. His cross comes first. His life comes first. His calling on us through the cross comes first. We are the first fruits of his life and his death and his resurrection. Now, the theologian Richard Niebuhr struggled with this, and a number of years ago he wrote an article that I'm going to quote from now. And what Richard Niebuhr was saying was he despises, he is angered by churches that are crossless. And he was referring in his day to that very sort of liberal Protestant approach that was saying anything can go in church. Or that very conservative on the other side, conservative evangelical approach that says come to church so you can feel good in your relationship with the Father. That you can, it's all about you being healed, you being filled with hope. That sort of approach. What he called seeker-sensitive churches. And this is what he wrote, and I'm quoting now. He says, a church that's like that, without any focus on the cross, he says that sort of church is serving a God without wrath, bringing men, people, without sin into a kingdom without judgment through the ministrations of a Jesus without a cross. So for Richard Niebuhr, faith without the cross, faith without that sacrifice of death and new life is not faith at all. There can be no Christianity without the cross. So friends, to bring this to a close for us, and I realize this is a fairly heavy theme this week. The cross is indispensable. It's in the cross we learn about God's love. It's in the cross we learn about the willingness of our Father to take the sins upon his Son, Jesus, and his willingness then to place his righteousness through Jesus on us. And this gift of new life and new hope follows the pain and the sacrifice and the victory of the cross. A price tag for Jesus, and in our dying to follow him, there's a price tag for you and me to carry as well. Now, the somber approach needs to be like this, coming up to Palm Sunday on the 28th and into Passion Week, that last week before the crucifixion. Passion Week, things get more dark for Jesus, get more serious. And so we should be getting more reflective and more somber and more calculated, careful rather, in our approach to our calling. And so I invite you to join with me. And as we journey towards the cross, as we go through Palm Sunday and then towards the cross in our Holy Week or our Passion Week, let's always do it thoughtfully and prayerfully, understanding more and more and more. It's all about Jesus and his willingness to die that I might live. It's all about that. And I need to accept that, and I understand why I must die to self to live, that Jesus may be shown to others. In Jesus' name, amen.